A notification.
He has a notification, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the live stream. We are live, as the live stream welcoming indicates. Today,
And a notification.
You're already getting blurry, my friend. Don't know how.
I'll get it back. Don't you just keep rolling.
I don't know how. See, he's pre-blurring now, so he's better later, and it'll be less blurry. Anyhow, we are the Indie Bros, and we are here to hopefully make your life easier if you happen to be a indie developer. We do all sorts of stuff from Steam store page optimization to streaming your games on the store page during sales and other events, to reaching out to press, content creators, streamers, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, today we're going to be discussing some stuff, and the things that we're going to be discussing today are the best practices for content creation and streaming. So, let's see. Who I'm going to throw it.
Start.
I'm going to throw it to a tiny disaster to start. Throw everybody out of whack. So, what do you think, a tiny disaster? What do you think?
What?
About our topic for today? Anything you're excited to talk about?
Yeah, it's true. Actually, we do like putting you on the spot because you usually like produce the diamond under the pressure, right? So what we're looking for here, I guess, is where should we start? Where do you think? What's interesting to you about this discussion as we kind of approached it over the last few days and put our notes together?
And I'll just be chilling over here in my beautiful office.
Is your camera okay? Your camera's up. Okay.
Yes, it's now up.
For some reason, it's not up on Discord. Gotcha.
No, yeah, it's because I captured directly through.
That is quite the office setup there. Very nice.
And
I was kind of put to shame by it. I was like, I'm gonna have to commission.
We have the see-through psych
to make
mug.
Me one. I like it a lot. I think my point is that I'm going to have to. Oh, so you have the real psych mug,
I do.
And then you have the. That's great.
The not so real psych mug.
Anyway, I'll commission you to build a cup background at
Dream office.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. So, sorry, I had to throw everything off out of kilter. Just the big reveal was there for me. I needed it.
Okay, so what am I excited about? What I thought was really interesting was just when we were coming up with the name for this, and then when we first came up with the topic, it was kind of streamer centered, and then kind of content creation got included as well. But we also started talking about people who use those tools but don't necessarily think of themselves as like, oh, I'm this. And specifically for me, or us really, is game devs and just kind of how you can use streaming and content creation and that kind of thing as part of your marketing tool set. So it'll be interesting to see kind of both sides of the coin, because like streaming is such a kind of mainstay of marketing, of promotion, of just being a part of the internet community now. So seeing different ways you can use that either from the technically I'm kind of trying to promote something side or build a community side versus the maybe you're just trying to get into streaming games on Twitch, or you're just trying to build up your own online community even though you don't have a particular product, you are kind of the product essentially. So the two different ways, and if there's going to be any differences there in terms of best practices, I'm interested to see. Because streaming is always something, like I've done live chats and stuff, but never like streaming games, or very little streaming games. So I've always been curious to kind of pick someone's brain about how that all works and why you get into it, and like pros and cons, and then how to jump into that world, but then also looking at game devs and how you might want to use that.
Yeah, and if you think about it, we're all three of us are content creators in different ways. We pushed into content creation in sort of different manners. Bumpy has a veteran experience with a long time running YouTube channel, and not a recent, but in the last few years moving over to Twitch as well, and adding to that that brand of his. And then with you have the social media aspects, right? You're pushing from almost like with the idea of I'm pushing from a perspective of I'm trying to get views on TikTok and on Twitter, etc. But that doesn't exclude you from making content on YouTube or Twitch, or in this case, so far you've been using our content and repurposing it for social media, which I think is a really important aspect of what we're talking about as well. And then for me, I've been from the side of like the indie, and now you two as well. As we work with indie brothers, we're getting the perspective of from the developer side, putting together campaigns for individual developers, and then also putting together campaigns for our own company. And then as well as like I've also pushed into Twitch over the last, I don't know, coming up on a year next month, which just seems insane. But that was basically purely hobbyist and such, just to kind of see and get a feel for it more. But it definitely ties back into the work that I do, and these kind of discussions now. So there's a lot I think of perspective here out of the three of us that we can provide, even though this isn't necessarily a where is it coming from directly. Like the last several discussions we've had, they've been directly from the perspective of Indie Bros PR. This is a little bit more of a if we have different opinions on things or people glean different things, that's completely okay, I think, out of the three of us, because we all have three different experiences out of the three of us. So, I mean, we can start with, I don't know, there's different notes here. I didn't put them in any particular order when I posted them on the Slack, Inside Baseball Talk right there. But like what Indie Bros is looking for when we search for best fit streamers and content creators is what I noted first, because it kind of ties into our company. And kind of like what we're looking for in a channel. I think we might have discussed this in short at some point. I can't remember when, at some point in the talks, but I think it's okay to go back over that now and talk a little bit about it and such. So to go into our process a little bit, we often will work with a client, for instance, Whitethorn Games' recent release, Lake, which is doing extremely well. Anyway, I was going to be like, keep going about Lake, but let's just stay on topic here. When we search for a game, when we get a game like Lake, we're going to want to look for, I know obviously we're going to refer to our bigger contacts, or our database of contacts for media, traditional media, YouTube content creators, streamers, possibly social media mavens, others, podcasters, etc. But we're often going to try to pad that original kind of more generic list, because those are just like, please send me the, most of your guys' PR with some, specific best fit streamers, best fit YouTubers, and best fit reviewers, traditional press, etc. So what I mean by that is, we'll have a list of like a few thousand people going out to PC or whatever, but we'll want to pluck some people from that database, and maybe some people that we don't even have in the database that are really, really strong fits for the game. So in Lake's situation, we're looking for people who are into low-key, wholesome, content, good vibes, chill vibes, all the things that kind of fit Whitethorn. And so there's a lot of, new age streamers. Like, I don't know what new age is, I don't know if that's the right word, but, folks in their kind of mid-20s, very positive in their streams. Cook Serve Delicious 3 actually worked with a lot of them. And what we were looking for specifically, is audience is like super important, right? The streamer's important to some extent, but I think we talked about this before. If you look at someone like our YouTuber, for instance, if their audience kind of dissipates when they go off of their normal track and what they're typically covering, and if what they're typically covering is an indie, that's kind of like a red flag for us. We might not say, oh, we'll never send them a code or anything, or we won't include them on our regular list. But as far as best fit and or potentially considering like a sponsorship, seeing that there's not like a lot of indie buzz around their channel is not going to help the situation. So, as we go through our process, we go through these channels, we take a look at what's being covered, and if they're able to kind of maintain numbers during variety. And then just additional, like, what's the personality like? Really quickly, just trying to see, we like to do like a vetting process in terms of, is this person, on the level, like a normal, not insano person that is going off about weird crap. That sometimes we find that, other times we were like, oh, retroactively we have to remove someone. People are people, and sometimes they reveal themselves at certain points in their lives to be who they are. So you got to be able to react to that. Anyway, rambling a little bit. My point is, we want to look for content creators that seemingly are already like have an audience that's excited about seeing new content and new games and alphas and betas or potentially of like new and exciting games. And then we kind of go from there, right? Other things that we might look for, trying to think, like, honestly, obviously contact information is important. If there's no way to reach you, then if you're super duper popular, that's fine. But if you're not, you're probably wanting to put out some way to contact you. A business email address, Twitter DMs open, and open Twitter DMs is okay, I guess. I wouldn't prefer it. I would prefer a business email address most likely, but that's just me. What else? Bumpy and Tiny Disaster, that comes to mind when you think, oh, this is a content creator or a streamer, etc., that makes sense for this kind of game. Like, or, if you go to just check out, I mean, I'm not sure if y'all have done this before, but when you go to check out a channel, with a game in mind, that kind of thing. Anything that comes to mind there?
I have a more broad question, because I've only done that, I think it was for like Beast of Marfa Island or something like that. Mm-hmm. But so when you're looking, or even just looking at anyone watching who might be new to streaming or hasn't, not even necessarily new to streaming, but hasn't considered jumping into like the PR world trying to get early copies of games, is there like a minimum audience size where you could like really start to consider looking at that?
I would say that there's like a minimal audience size for the most part. It just depends on the game. Some developers are really prickly about like, we want this level of content creator, which I totally, to some extent, I get. If you don't have much of an audience, but you're trying in earnest, we tend to, as far as indie brothers go, we tend to not try to exclude you or keep you out, because we understand that you're trying to build a channel, and perhaps I've noticed as well, and Bumpy can attest to this, if you get new content out for a game that pops, that YouTube channel can see, or at least the video can see, a lot of benefit from that, and that benefits obviously both the developer and the content creator. So trying to like just kind of go over your question in my head. Can you repeat it one more time? Sorry.
Just minimum audience size for anyone to start thinking about reaching out or anything.
Honestly, I think it's on the developer and how they feel about their distribution. As I think we've talked about before, we're pretty accessible, right? We're not trying to, or inclusionary. We're not trying to exclude too many people. There are times, I think, when exclusive, early looks and things like that can be a tighter list of individuals. Mm-hmm. But by the time you get close to release, unless you're something fantastic or really special and you don't think you need the support of, the entirety of this streamosphere from small channels to big, then I think you should be considering getting them codes in time to promote your game when it's supposed to be promoted, as in either the lead up to release or on launch day, etc. There's a lot that goes into that. Again, there's a flip side to it, because unfortunately for honest and earnest content creators, we get a ton of scam emails that are trying to just get codes from us, and they just set up fake YouTube channels, botted channels, to try to kind of convince us that they're legitimate, and then they take the code and either, I think, claim it for themselves, or more likely try to resell it on the gray market. So it's something that is, I understand why developers maybe don't dabble as much with smaller content creators because of that. It's an unfortunate disadvantage for smaller content creators, because that scamming aspect really takes the want to communicate and work with content creators, I think, off a little bit when you see, okay, if I have a really popular game, my Manifold Garden to this day still gets scam requests. And when it was launching, it was like 5 a day, like that we were vetting out and saying, no, this is not a legitimate source. So it really is, to me, less about viewership, if you're a smaller channel, right? Because it's like, here's how I look at it. If you have something that's really, really huge, like that's eye-popping, you'll feel that right away. You're like, oh my gosh, a really huge content creator wants to cover our game and such. And that takes care of itself. anything below like I don't know, like 90,000 though, like subs or whatever. And that's like YouTube versus Twitch. Twitch can have I think maybe 20,000. That's pretty 10,000. That's pretty impressive. My point is that anything under like a pretty high number, it's kind of all the same to me. It then becomes about your presentation, your pitch, or your request. I guess it's not really a pitch, right? It's a request if someone's requesting a code or whatever. Does it give me the information I need, and is it not giving me a bunch of information I don't need? Like, is there brevity to it as well, in addition to just providing me the A, B, and C I need to confirm that that you're a legitimate source to send to? Other than that, like activity level, right? Like if we go to your channel on YouTube or on Twitch and see the last time you posted was months ago, again, that if it's not a scam, then it almost is a scam to us that you're asking for a code and you haven't posted content on the channel that you say you're going to post to in months. So that's kind of how we look at it. We're looking for legitimate people that are interested in covering our game. It's really not about how big or small they are. That's from Indie Brothers' perspective, not necessarily every single client's perspective. Every clients are different. So
okay, I have a follow-up question, one for each of you. So probably makes sense just to stick with you for a second. So in terms of best practices, if a streamer is reaching out to you, to Indie Bros, to one of the companies we represent, all of that, what are the best practices to put in that introductory email? Say, I would like a code. Here's who I am. What should they include?
Yeah, great follow-up. Bumpy, you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll circle the whole thing when you're done. Circle
the wagons. So I would say that I need to see your channel that you are, intending to post on. If you have multiple channels that you intend to post on, like including social media, then you can include those. Otherwise, they're not necessary. I don't need to see 5 links. Your primary channel, Twitch or YouTube, and maybe your Twitter, to show me Twitter. And obviously, I would share your Twitter if you feel like it strengthens your legitimacy, right? Like if you're active on Twitter and they can see you're a real person, maybe include that social media link as well. Other than that, letting them know that you're interested in covering the game. If you want to, you don't need to do this with us, but it's not a bad idea to have like maybe a sentence that explains exactly why you'd like to cover the game. This is a great fit for my channel. I'm super interested. I've been following this game for months. Things like that. While again, it doesn't really matter to me personally, it will matter to developers. Developers will care to hear, your intention or why your motive for covering the game. So again, you don't want to get too long-winded with it, but a sentence or two to sort of share, your intentions and motives of why you want to cover the game. And it could be really simple. It could be like, I've just been following this game, like I said, for months, and it just looks really fun. Would love to cover it and share with my audience. Always good to say you're going to get the word out further, right? Would love to share with my audience. Is a great way to convince me that to give you a code, because it's like, okay, cool, you're going to share with your audience. That sounds great. That sounds like something that I would want to do from a developer's perspective. So other than that, request one code only, unless you need more, unless it makes sense to request more, and then be very clear why you need more than one code. Now, if it's a multiplayer game and you have other people involved, and Bumpy knows from the content creator requesting side that you need to be very specific about this kind of stuff, because one of the main scams we run into all the time is people saying, we're interested in your game, Manifold Garden, all in caps. So obviously a copy paste. I don't even know where they got the all caps from. And then it keeps going, and it's like, if you could send us a few keys, if you could send us 3 to 5 keys, it's like, why do you need those? They often will say we have a couple of reviewers, as like try to cover their tracks with that kind of thing. It screams. It's a really big red flag when that comes into play. So if you need more than one key, you need to be very precise and detailed in terms of why you need more than one key, and where those other keys, in addition to your code, where that's going to, how that's going to be kind of utilized to create content or stream, etc. With multiple people, etc. That kind of thing. Other than that, I mean, I don't think that was too long a list. That's about it. I'm not looking for anything else, I think, from my perspective. Yeah.
And what was your follow-up question for me? And I'll answer the first question or part of it, and whatever your other question was. Tiny Disaster.
It was really more of a general, like from the flip side of a streamer, what has been your experience in starting to reach out for codes, in doing promo? Just like, is there anything you can add from the other side?
Gotcha. All right, so I guess it's all kind of encompassed in this. So how small is too small to reach out? Well, surprisingly, way smaller than you think it is. I was being helped by someone when I was just starting out. They were telling me I had a bunch of questions. They were answering them. It was great. And they're like, man, you should. He's like, oh, I said, oh, I see you cover this or whatever. And they're like, dude, they're really cool. Just try to reach out to them. I'm like, I've only got like 70 or whatever, like a really small amount of subscribers at this point. I'd been doing it for a couple months, and when you start off, it's really slow. And I was like, okay, I suppose. Uh-oh, I'm seeing a timeout on our stream. It's back. Okay. I was like, all right, so sure, I'll take a chance. And a few indie developers, they were willing to work with me. And then one of the bigger ones that I took a chance on, it's still an indie developer, but it was a game that was going to do quite well. And if you guys ever heard of Xenonauts, it was basically like a modern day XCOM in the style of the old XCOM, not the newer ones. And a lot of people really kind of gravitated toward that game, and I got my hands on it really early, and it literally brought me from 70 subscribers to 1,200 based off of that game alone. So that was my first massive break, and just out of nowhere, the developer's like, yeah, here, go ahead and do it. And random luck with timing. I mean, it all comes, down to how long are you visible and what are you bringing to the table. That is it doing that on YouTube again? I'm sorry. Or YouTube as well? Are you guys noticing the drop in the...
Seems okay.
It does seem okay.
It might just be my preview screen. If that's all it is, I'm fine with it. Okay, I'm sorry to break there.
Oh.
So that was...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's a really good point and kind of blends into one of our other points. I'm not sure if it does or not, but the idea that it obviously doesn't make sense to not reach out, even if you're like, I'm not feeling like I'm there yet in terms of what I want to do, because as you alluded to, or as you basically told us, you can grow together. Exactly. You can grow together with other indie developers, and like Bumpy was inferring, you could start small. You don't have to necessarily go for the if you go for AAAs and really big name indies right away, your success failure rate will be a little bit different than if you are reaching out to indies just trying to get their foot in the door, trying to establish themselves on Steam, etc. If you don't feel like you are seeing enough of a response rate at the higher levels, doesn't mean you don't have to do it. You could still, because you could you get Bumpy runs into Xenonauts. The rest is history in terms of him actually saying, I'm going to reach out and not just think, oh, this game is too, or this developer is too big to consider sending me a code. So, still reach for the stars, but understand also as you're building, you should be working with people that are like in a different situation, building their own kind of empire, company, etc. So like as they're on their way up, you're on your way up, you work together. This is also like sage advice in general, like in business in general. Never step on anybody. You never know where they're going to be in 5 to 10 years. Always be willing to work and collaborate, and unless they're total jerks, then whatever, screw them. But if they're good people, right? You never want to be, there's channels too small, that kind of stuff. And that's kind of how I think about it from the Indie Brothers perspective as well when we send codes out. We don't know where they're going to be in 5 years. We might establish a good relationship with them, keep that for 5 years, and all of a sudden they're in a much better situation to expose our games in 4 or 5 years from now. And so to me, it's just kind of an investment, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But we don't lose anything by investing into smaller content creators. So as far as I'm concerned,
for me, it's one of those, and it's another way of saying what you're saying is you work with somebody in the early stages. And then, you build a relationship and they're like, hey, and this was something you were mentioning earlier, but, hey, if you covered our game at this point and we're getting bigger, getting more traction, maybe Xenonauts 2 is going to be huge, right? And the developer's like, hey, you covered our game, you did really well, you want to cover it again? and then boom, I do that, and then I grow again, they grow again. I mean, it's just gonna help. But on top of that, it's one of those reach out, because you never know who's going to say yes, but cover the games, and on top of that, don't feel bad if they say no. Like, a no is a good thing actually in this industry, because most of the time you're just met with silence. You have no idea what's going on. You're like, did you even I think you might be muted or something.
Me?
Oh,
test 1 2.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I was going to say I totally agree with you, basically, if I was trying to say something there.
Oh, gotcha.
And didn't mean to make you lose your train of thought. But you were saying if you get a response, getting ghosted or no reply at all is pretty common. So getting a response that at least lets you know that they gave you a fair shake. Yeah. It just didn't work out, but maybe next time around. Again, these are developers. Most of these studios, or at least like a good portion of these studios we're talking about, Bumpy, we know have multiple releases, multiple iterations of their series and games, and so it's just a thing about being in the right mindset for it. And then if it's not there, and then you got to move on and find something else to put it into, kind of put forth on your channel, because if you're like refusing to. If a code didn't come in and you really want to cover the game, you can still buy it. Yeah. It's just unfortunate because you don't get that early access to it like you'd like. Give you the chance to get ahead of it, which is a big deal.
That's something that comes a bit later on down the road. Like, it's always nice as early as you can get it. It's always a good thing, but when you're first starting off, it'd be great if you can get that, but you're not expecting it. It's not something that you're used to. But yeah, as you get further along and you start doing stuff, especially if you're not a large, I don't have a large channel by any stretch of the imagination, but I can still swing way above my weight class if I get a chance to at least release at the same time everyone else does. People will be like, oh, hey, who's this person? Oh, I never heard of them. And then boom, that's all it takes, right? Be visible for however long, and then all of a sudden, okay. Which is it's one of those things that for me, I always feel like the industry kind of just keeps building the bigger people bigger, and it does. Yeah. And it makes sense to, but it doesn't really give a lot of the smaller content creators a chance to really go. Because if you think about it, let's say Northernlion, for instance, if he's going to cover something and you go, hey, I'm going to choose a select 5 people that are maybe smaller content creators to get a week ahead of time, advanced access to the game to be able to do it. The bigger content creators will get mad, and I understand that they might not even want to cover your game, whatever. But is it going to hurt them if I'm covering the game before? No, he's still going to get all his subscribers and the viewers and everything else that he's going to get. It's not really going to hurt them. It'll give us a chance to actually get above, get ahead, and maybe get visible for once instead of being buried. Yeah. But again, it doesn't make sense to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But at the same time, if you're a smaller streamer and you get or YouTuber and you get content out ahead of a bunch of larger streamers covering it,
never
or YouTubers,
break embargo.
Right, don't break embargo. Do it legitimately. But if you're able to get that content up, just in the hypothetical, Bumpy, that you are just into a game early that hasn't established its hype train but is going to, right? So you get that opportunity to cover the game early, then all of a sudden Northernlion and these other guys cover it later. Now your video is much more valuable at that point as like the popularity of that game starts to spread out and grow. So yeah, I think another thing to keep in mind as we're discussing this, we're kind of just bouncing all over the place, just fine for this kind of discussion, is you have to understand that you're not entering a new market in any way, shape, or form. YouTube and Twitch have been like super established for a long time now. YouTube especially, but Twitch really has really hit its established period. Right? It's not in its growth. It's not in this like incredible growth period. It had that, and Bumpy talks about 7 years ago. You could ride certain trains. Like YouTube would give you these pushes. And such, because it was, still kind of the halcyon days. Yep. But now it's different, right? If you're a new channel, this is very similar. This is eerily similar, Tiny Disaster, to our discussion about being a new game developer in this industry, right? If you're a new content creator or a streamer in this industry, you have to understand that that's a very, very crowded pool that you're getting into. And so I think new small streamers, new small content creators actually have to be like 5 times like more impressive than big ones now, to like garner an audience and grow, because a lot of these big channels are already established. People just click over to their notifications when they get the big channels, as Bumpy pointed out. The rich, just like on the dev side, the rich will always get richer. Yep. And so how do you combat that? Well, it's attitude obviously is really important, but also like, trying to build your experience. If you're new at this, you shouldn't be thinking about competing with anybody at this point. You need to just get better at what you're doing. You need to stream consistently, or you need to make content consistently, and then you need to look at what your flaws are and improve upon them. Otherwise, like, you might not ever be able to compete. Some people are naturals at this kind of stuff, but others, like myself, it takes time. It took time to figure it out, even over the last year, and there's still a lot of things that I can do to improve myself as a content creator / streamer. So that's something that I think you should be thinking about a lot, is how to evolve, basically, not like just yourself, but like how to gain experience, and also like where your channel's going, what your focuses are on, and all that kind of stuff. And settle on and focus on that stuff to start. You shouldn't be like comparing yourself with other channels right away. You should be focusing on what your channel is gonna bring to the table, right? Like, so I think like beyond that, you have to just be willing to, like I said, being polished is really good. Having, good graphics and animations and things of that sort, things that kind of fit certain aspects of Twitch. If you're doing Twitch streaming, you'll notice a lot of like animated we'll be right back pages and things like that, that are just super, a lot of high effort into it and stuff. You don't necessarily have to have that degree right away, but that kind of production value can establish a professional, or I don't know if professional is the right word, but it really good fit channel for, kind of growing and such. But to me, it's just looking at maybe if you do compare to other, or you're going, oh, I'm looking at this other streamer or watching, because you shouldn't just not watch other YouTubers or streamers. You need to glean things from them as well. But it's a double-edged sword, because you can see the success they're getting, possibly easier than you, etc. And that can be tough. But at the same time, what are they doing? What are they doing that's succeeding? And then ask yourself, do I want to do that? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. There might be portions of you that says, you know what, I don't want to sacrifice who I am as a person to just do this thing because that's what's popular. And that's totally fine. I think one of the things I see in 2021 is that there's a lot of popular content creators that got there because they were like unapologetically themselves. Like they were like, I'm not going to just go and be a screamy YouTuber. I'm not going to be and like sort of a bombastic person. And yet these people still have like 4,000 concurrent viewers on their streams and such. And I think the point is that people audiences appreciate, your genuine self. Now, not everybody, right? Like there might be things that you want to continue to improve, and your performance ability, it is a performance to some degree. You can't just completely think, oh, I'm just going to go on there and be myself. Maybe you can. Maybe it's natural like that. But if you're like, actually, me normally is a little boring, raise his hand. Like, you have to think about certain things when you go live. You want to be able to mix it up a little bit. And bring something to the table that's like, okay, yeah, I will watch the streamer because they're doing something that's interesting to me, or they're telling stories, they're getting, I don't want to get too far. I don't want to go down this road too much because it can be dangerous. But, obviously just sharing your personal hobbies and interests on your stream can be a really, really solid way to establish who you are as like a unique individual person to an audience, as well as that's really passionate for you to talk about the things that you're passionate about, or rather it's good for you to talk about the things you're passionate about, generally speaking. Probably exceptions to that rule that we can come up with right off the bat, but generally speaking, if you're streaming things that you're passionate about in the first place, then everything else kind of falls into place after that. And you're not really considering, oh, I need to have the audience numbers up for this or that. It's like, no, I'm just doing something I like, and that's, I think, a good place to start. So I've kind of rambled over into some personal advice from my perspective of what I've seen over the last year doing content creation and streaming. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it, is that it's like, if you're just pushing into streaming or content creation just to be that, and it's not something that's like drawing you in because it's like, oh, I think I'd really like to do this, or there's a passion behind this, or I have something I want to, one of my big passions I want to bring to the table here and share with people, then you should ask why you're doing it in the first place. Because you have to, if you look around, content creators and streamers are as susceptible to burnout and all that kind of stuff as anyone. And that, even if they're doing what they love the whole time, it could still be like a situation where you burn out. So imagine if you're like trying to grind out content all the time and it's not something you like to do. So something to keep in mind, I think, right as you're stepping into that, am I going to be a streamer? Am I going to be a content creator? There's this honeymoon period. Oh, I love it. I love streaming. I love having people talk in my chat. I love have people jump in, and this is great. After a while, it's going to kind of go away in terms of that initial motivation. And what are you going to do after that? What does your channel look like after that? What's the situation that you see yourself in if you're not, you're like maybe at your lowest motivated point? Is your channel just going to go dark, or is there still a way for you to churn out content when you're like, man, I was really excited about this 3 months ago, but right now I'm not? That's something to keep in mind. Bumpy is a year-round YouTuber, right? Like, he's always posting content, like year-round. So that is a battle that Bumpy most likely has to fight with consistently, throughout his years.
That's what the good backlog is for sometimes. However, so just to quickly wrap up the thought. So if I started maybe a year earlier, I'm pretty sure I would be quite well off. If I started a year later, I probably wouldn't even be 10K. So yes, the earlier you start now, or like the newer you are on YouTube or on Twitch or whatever the case is, the harder and harder it's going to be, because like, I think it's more than 99% of people don't make a difference, don't really make an impact, don't succeed, and probably over 90% of the people just eventually just quit because they don't want to do it because it's not going anywhere. I think the numbers are probably even higher than that, and I know 99% is a pretty high number, but I mean, you look, you're like, oh, there's a bunch of different streamers. Yeah, but you're talking about, hundreds, maybe thousands of, successful streamers or successful YouTubers out of hundreds of thousands, if not millions. It's a tiny percent of a percent that make it. So yes, passion, desire is definitely something that needs to be done, or you need to have in order to do this. And then going back to when you were talking about reaching out and what you look for and all that stuff, what I always like to do, and I've stopped doing this as much now because I've talked to more people, but I always kind of like to introduce myself, always, of course, include my channel, make sure on the About section in my channel, and I believe I have it on Twitter as well, have your business email. Make sure they can contact you. That's super important. Include a link and say, like someone was posing to be me before, and reached out to a bunch of developers and stuff, and they actually contacted me and were like, this wasn't you, right? I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, this is the email they used. And I couldn't even tell. They changed the G to a Q, the lowercase g to a Q, and I didn't even notice it. I'm like, how did they get my email? And then they told me, I'm like, oh, crap. So I made a big video and all that stuff to put up there and warn people. So yeah, always, yeah, it's people are terrible sometimes, but always make sure you have your contact information. That's like the number one most important thing you could probably do if you want to be reaching out for codes. And if I had to rely on me just buying everything that I do, I would still buy some things, and I do still sometimes occasionally have to, but I would probably have only covered maybe a tenth of what I've covered now. I've covered, I think, over 800 games on my channel in the 8 years almost that I've been doing it. So we're talking 80 games versus over 800. It's a pretty big change. Yes, and definitely make it easier for us to send you keys, as Tigers fan is telling us here. Because if you got to search around and everything else, sometimes it's not worth the effort. It should be there. That's like 101 YouTubing. So reach out, make sure you get the name of the game right. Don't make it a cut and paste, copy. I like to at least personalize it somewhat. Maybe a small paragraph, 2-3 sentences. Say, hey, I like this X game. I've been following it on Twitter for a year or whatever. Very interested, want to share it. Would I be able to get my hands on a review code for it? Here's my channel. Thank you for your time and consideration. And then sign your name, and that's it. That's really all I really need to do at this point. Back then, I'm like, hey, I'm new on YouTube. I'm doing this and so on. And it was okay, but again, it's a lot of wasted time for you guys. I just try to build relationships. That was always my thing when I first started. And it worked out okay. But I think that pretty much covers everything that we were kind of talking about in the very long and kind of windy first point.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question for both of you, and I'm going to give you a chance to think about it because I also have just a quick point. So the question is going to be, are there any streamers you can think of as just like good examples of, say, just streamers doing well? If so, say someone wants to look at other people in the streaming community, learn from them, like you were suggesting, Cup, of like, is there anyone that stands out in your mind of like, they're doing a great job, have a look at their channel? And so while you're thinking about that, I had a comment on just the like being yourself, and also the looking at where you can improve, and just the note of it's okay to be awkward on camera. I see it so much on the content creation side. You see it on the Twitch side of people who just don't want to be on camera, and they know they look and sound a little awkward at first, and it's just something that gets better with time. And it's so beneficial to put your face in front of your audience, to let them see you react, to let them just see who you are and see just kind of what you're all about, instead of just being a voice behind a screen. But it's gonna feel awkward at first, not just for you. Like, I'd love to be able to say, don't worry, your audience won't be able to see it. I look back at the like early YouTube videos I did on the like publishing side channel, and I can't watch them. It's so crazy. Yeah. And at the time, like, people still watch. No one was being like, oh, awkward. Like, and we got better over time, and it's just part of the process. No one is going to criticize you for it. Like, if the content's still great, that's what's going to matter, and you will get better at it, but only if you actually do it.
Yeah, and it's a really natural thing for people who are growing to look back at themselves years past and going, ugh. You know what I mean? That's a totally normal thing, and that's a sign of growth, I feel like. I can attest to some of my earlier comedy bits in my early 20s and stuff. So it hurts me to watch them now. So I totally understand that. But that said, if I hadn't done it, I definitely, it just wouldn't have built the experience off of that. One thing I want to do before I answer your question, Tiny Disaster, is I had a point about how to kind of build as a smaller channel. And one thing I'm seeing, regardless of whether you're small or big, is if you have a schedule that's almost like like if you're just streaming video games sort of for whatever reason, just because you want to, okay, but there's a trillion people already doing that. So what are you bringing to the table? Is there a way that you can kind of, you can just loosely do this, but make it a show. Make it an actual, production with maybe some formatting involved. Again, it can be really loose. You're still streaming, just being yourself. But, why are people coming there? Why are they going to watch you play this game over someone who's 1,000 times bigger than you play this game? So there has to be kind of things to come up with. It might not be coming up with like specific shows or something like that, but episodic cut type stuff. But that's something to keep in mind, is that, what can you bring to the table from like a production or theatrical mindset, as opposed to just, I'm going live and I'm going to play games. That's it. There's a big difference between the two. And to me, even if you're not building an audience, you're building really good experience if you're focused on the ideas behind the fundamentals behind building your channel up as a small streamer, instead of just, I'm going to go live and whatever happens.
Dog wanted to say
Bumpy.
hi.
Oh, hi to
Katie.
Oh, yeah. Guys, I keep switching back and forth. Twitch is where we're getting the chat right now. So, to answer your question, A Tiny Disaster, and we've already mentioned his name a couple of times, but because I've studied him a bit, I feel confident in talking about him. So what Northernlion does, and yes, he's already really popular and stuff, so it kind of might be a moot point, but at the same time, if he was doing what he was doing now as a small streamer, I think he would be finding success in building himself up as well. So a couple things he's doing. He's really personal. he likes to go into, and he's like a natural comedian and to some degree anyway, so that favors what he's doing. But when he's kind of discovered over the last, I think, 5+ years, that sharing stupid, silly stories about him and what's happened over the weekend, etc., because he doesn't stream on the weekends right now, he's just Monday through Friday. So he really likes, he's talked about that on Twitter. I like having the days off to build up, information and content to share going into these streams the next week. So a lot of Northernlion's streams are with 3 to 5 other people involved, like a squad stream. So they all kind of give each other story time, etc., or like the time to talk for a little bit about something or something. Maybe not even that it's something that happened in their life, but like Northernlion just will go off on something about, like, one of my favorite jokes, evergreen joke about Northernlion is that he talks about Subway and how Subway has sort of rubed everybody into believing that eating a foot-long bread roll is healthy. And it's just like, to me, it's really comical because it's so true. We all just kind of accept that in the States, etc. About like, oh, Subway's a healthy place. It's like, actually, if you get the meatball, it's like literally eating 3 hamburgers. So that's something that I think brings people back, is that he's very willing to dive into personal situations and stories, and then out of that he comes up with sort of funny stuff. Now, am I going to be able to go into my personal stuff and share that, and will that benefit me to some degree? Yes. Will I be as funny as Northernlion? Probably not. It doesn't necessarily have to be funny, though. Just anything personal and relatable, I think, is really good in 2021 as far as building an audience. You want to be a relatable person, if that makes sense. And by talking about some of your trials, tribulations, flaws, embarrassments, or funny stories in general.
Marriage proposals.
Yeah, like Bumpy had a great stream a couple weeks back where he went into a couple of different aspects of his personal life, and the chat just really came to life. So it's you see that kind of, if you give them something to talk about, chat, you likely will see that coming back. Northernlion also does a really good job of social media. He says, we're going live in 15 minutes. We're going to be playing this, and everyone's favorite, this, Plant Zomboid or Jackbox. He's banking off of the fact that his audience has already seen like really good streams with these games before, and that they're like, oh, I can't miss this next one. And then he's always like, he always ends his, we're live, get in here. So it's not like mean, but it's like inclusive, like, get in here, we're getting started and stuff. So all these moves he makes, like, continue to let his reign continue, so to speak, because he's not just sitting on his laurels. He's doing things on Twitter pretty consistently, and he's being a personality as well. He'll literally put out those kind of SHIT posts. I don't want to say the cuss word, but he'll be posting a lot and getting a lot of likes and building a lot of audience from there. I don't know if that's something that I would consider doing, but it almost seems like crap posting is part of building a good channel sometimes. If you're willing to just make funny remarks, they have typos all the time in their tweets, and it's because of the ironic nature of the internet. The internet always has typos, so they decided we're going to have typos in our tweets as well, even though, like I say Northernlion, but there's also another one that he works with named Chib Lee, who never uses punctuation, and it's all ironic, really. Like, he's just leaning into the fact that this is the internet. So it's interesting how they go about that, right? How they see what they're doing and how they can amplify what they already have going. Again, Northernlion's super popular. There's probably smaller content creators I could look at and say, look at how they're building up through what they're doing and stuff. But he's just really smart in terms of, I'm not just going to sit here. I'm going to continue to build and more than maintain things.
Okay, it looks like Tigers fan says that Tug Boet, I'm not sure if that's a typo or if that's the actual person, is another small streamer that he believes does a great job. Unfortunately, and it might be sad, but I don't really watch that much on Twitch, to be honest. I don't watch that many live streams. And I watch well, I don't have a lot of free time for one, but I just don't watch that much other content creators. A little bit on YouTube here and there. So really, it's just people that I've streamed with. Maybe a few people that I've seen stream. I mean, Supplier Cat's killing it. He's doing great. When he moved over from YouTube to Twitch, still does his YouTube stuff, but it's like 1 or 2 videos a day, and he streams just like every day, just about. He's killing it there. I'm not sure. Just he had an audience, and then he brought that audience with him to Twitch. It's just and Colonel's very consistent as well, both on YouTube and like that guy's a monster. I don't know how he's still alive. He puts out like 5 videos a day, and he's been doing it for like at least 4 or 5 years, every day on a schedule even on YouTube, and he still streams 2-3 times a week, 4 times I guess with us. So yeah, I don't know how he does it.
He's definitely an exception to the rule in terms of like running into horrible burnout and having that cause you to fall apart and stuff. So I'll give him that. Like you as well in that.
Well, I mean, I did it for like 3-4 years, but I mean, he's consistent and he's doing even more than I was back then. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and y'all do that for a purpose. It's not like you just do that for no reason. Yeah, so that's like the full-time grind of content creation. It doesn't mean that's the only way to go about it, but that is certainly one way to go about it. That will bring in that sets a bar of consistency and gives you those opportunities for like bigger video pops and such. So yeah, I mean, obviously just setting expectations. Why are you getting into content creation? To what degree are you getting into it? Like streaming and content creation? Are you going to be full-time? Are you going to be part-time hobbyist? Like what is the approach there? And then what are the goals that you want to see? If you're going full-time and it's your job, then yeah, numbers are probably going to matter to you more than if you're like a hobbyist or part-time. And therefore you need to be thinking about, I don't know, just all those things we talked about today on how to grow your channel, and not just be thinking about it, but executing on that, and then looking at the data and making adjustments. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot more to it if you're full-time versus part-time. So there's a lot, again, thinking about where you're coming from, all that kind of start. And then sort of a point to wrap up to what Kelly, or to go back to what Kelly was talking about at the beginning of this stream. If you're a developer, or if you're in the industry in another way, if you're a writer, a PR person, etc., there's no reason not to start getting into content creation and streaming, etc. That's going to, as we talked about already, allow you to gain experience in an area or areas that maybe you haven't spent a ton of time in, but is important, right? Like we talked about, Twitch and YouTube are 2 of the most important platforms out there in terms of getting exposure for your games. So you establishing a channel and seeing where that goes as a developer certainly makes a lot of sense if you feel like you aren't mailing it in or have the time for it. Because if you mail it in or you don't have the time for it, it'll probably show and it probably won't go anywhere, and you'll feel like it's a waste of time. So you do have to, regardless of who you are and where you're coming from, if you're getting into content creation or streaming, you better have a plan. This is nothing new that we've talked about. I mean, like you better have a plan thing is something that we talk about every single week. I feel like have a plan. So yeah, what else do we want to touch on here? I'm going to go over the notes and see if we missed anything.
Yeah, while you're going over the notes, so here's my thought also for sending out codes. Like no matter how small you are, like reach out, because in very simple terms, if they send you a code and say you only get 50 views on your video, which again, some people that might be a huge deal for them. I understand. Trust me, I understand. If you convince, or you play in it having fun, convinces one other person to buy the game, like they're not even like recouping the cost there, but technically they can consider it that way because they sent you a code where maybe you would have bought the game, but you got one other person to do it. At least there it's a 1-for-1 exchange. But chances are you're going to get more than one person interested in the game, and they're going to be able to, get more sales off of it. Even if it's not, one person with, 1 million subscribers might be able to convince like 400,000 people. That's probably not true, but 400,000 people to get the game. Whereas somebody with 20,000 subscribers might convince, 400 people to do it. It's still worth it. It's still worth sending that code to the 400 person versus the 400,000. Like, they're both worth it, obviously, but there's still some worth to it. And what about you, A Tiny Disaster? Do you have any streamers that you particularly like and think is doing something interesting, unique, or just doing very well for themselves?
Honestly, no, because part of the reason I asked is it's not really a community I've been a part of.
Okay.
Of like, generally right now where I learn about new games is Twitter and TikTok, but I haven't really, like, I delved into the world of streaming a little bit a few years ago as part of like the writing stuff I was doing. The game I used to work for, there was a streamer who would do a weekly stream of, like, it was a writing game, so they would play the game in like writing sprints and like every weekday morning or something, so then everyone could come on and they could write at the same time, kind of playing through like quests and monster battles and stuff in the game. So that was kind of my only real experience with it. Like, I've had a Twitch account forever, but it's not something, and like, it's hard to know where to start.
Yeah.
Nega Oryx is someone who I really admire. She's built her channel up over time. Very professional, is connected and uses her connections really well in terms of working with, artists. She's in LA, so brands, charities, etc. She's up there at that echelon where she's now getting brand offers and being able to represent them on her streams, etc. So, and she does a really good. Her kind of thing is that she's silly, just has a lot of those nice qualities about, like, just the growth of basically non-men streamers. She's part of that, and she does a really great job with that. And unfortunately, she's been dealing with some chronic pain lately, so her consistency has been down a little bit. But she actually was the voice of Whisk in Cook Serve Delicious 3. And yeah, she always just has a bubbly personality that her audience is kind of like taken to. And she's one of those wholesome streamers, right? Like that I think I value highly because when I have a game that I think, okay, this is a pretty good game, and I think that it'll go over well with streamers. You never know, right? You might give it to some streamer who seems fairly neutral, but then just starts bashing it or ripping it apart. Wholesome streamers, it's not like you're not trying to fix the game too much, but if you give it to positive, wholesome streamers, a lot of times they're having a positive, wholesome time with it. So there is something to that as far as a marketing, PR, developer perspective that we're seeing. That we're saying, hey, why don't we give it to the people that are really positive all the time, as opposed to anybody who trashes it. That goes for reviewers as well.
I rarely say negative things about games, so yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Right, and this we appreciate integrity, but also subjectivity is a big part of what we do, right? And if we send to a site a couple of times and we get 4s or 5s out of 10s or 6 out of 10s and everything else is 8 out of 10 across the other sites, we might not send to you anymore, just straight up, because we're not trying to blackball you or anything. But your 4 out of 10 really matters to us. It hurts us in a really hardcore way. And if it's not justified, which, again, subjective discussion, but if you can say, hey, the rest of our reviews were 7s and 8s, and you gave us a 4, and this is a Metacritic review, and it's really hurting us, you might strike them from your contact list. And that goes for streamers and YouTubers as well. If they're, if they have like legitimate critiques, things like that, criticisms.
There's a difference between
totally
constructive criticism, saying, oh, that's not right. Maybe if they tried something like this, but again, I'm not a programmer, something like that. Don't go there and go, I have all the answers, blah, blah, blah. That's not very helpful. But at the same time, also you can, point out flaws or mistakes or whatever and be like, ooh, well, this, that. And you don't have to be overtly negative. You can still have a good time with the game. A lot of people they hate everything. It's awful. It's just so bad.
It means a lot to the developer. Even if the content creator if the game isn't for them in the end, that they just go through it and say, it just wasn't for me in the end, but I enjoy it. Maybe or there's probably an audience out there that would enjoy it. That kind of thing. That means a lot to the developer versus the content creator just being like,
this was garbage.
I played this to essentially tear it apart, because most of the time, most of the time, if they don't want to play it, they're not going to play it, right? Like it's like they're not going to play it just to tear it apart. That's a very specific brand.
I don't know. There's a lot of people that
creators.
do that though.
Oh no, what I'm saying is that's a certain section or brand. And we're not looking to get involved with them very much at all. So one note that I wanted to talk to, this is kind of a tiny disaster note. So how your social media efforts can benefit your channel. We've gone into this a little bit, what you should be doing and trying, what you shouldn't be doing, etc. Talked a little bit about Northernlion's approach. But obviously it's something that can just add weight onto your plate in terms of your output and work that you need to do for your channel. But it also can benefit it extremely. One of the ways that I think is an important and tiny disaster, I'll hand it over to you in a second, but one of the things I always think of is regardless of whether you're like a social media like person or not, just getting an account, following some other accounts that you feel are like-minded or, in the same kind of mutuals in the same boat, or people that you are looking up to, even as like passive mentors, right? Like Twitter can provide many passive mentors that are just, they're putting the advice out there and you can read it. And obviously you need to make sure if you're going to reply to them or get in contact with them that you have something to bring to the table and not just be like, hey, look at me, I'm also doing what you're doing. You're like, okay. So you have to, there's something more than that when you start networking and collaborating. But I think social media is a great place to start. It's really hard to necessarily find people on YouTube and Twitch themselves, in the same way that you could find them on social media, on like Twitter and such.
So we have kind of gone over similar advice before, because I would say, like, the ground level of, like, if you don't want to be on Twitter, if you hate Twitter, please don't get a Twitter account to support your Twitch stream. Of like, you don't have to do it, and it's not going to be fun for anybody to follow you if you're just trying to do it because you feel like it's part of the job description. It doesn't need to be. The next step up is exactly what you said, of like, you don't need to interact or be a big part of the community, but like have an account so if someone goes looking for you, you can easily link to your channel or your email address, and you can follow people and just kind of use it to lurk and stay on top of what is happening in the industry as a whole, what other streamers are doing. It's going to be up to you kind of how you utilize that, but that's why I love social media. Like, you don't have to follow anyone you're not interested in. There's no rules here.
Right. And over the years, you can try to find a voice if you want to. If you don't feel like you have a voice yet, and it's something that you're just like trying to establish, if it's crickets when you put it out there, then nobody's gonna know about it in a few months, and you can try it again. Like try your new efforts or approach, that kind of thing. But at the very least, like we're talking about, there's a business aspect to having it up, right? There's a business aspect in terms of people trying to find you, and like potentially business partners or people who want to collaborate with you, can find you better if you have that kind of stuff set up. So if it's not, like you said, if it's not for you, then don't just push out content that is forced, because it's a waste of time and energy for the content creator themselves, and like you said, nobody cares, or the audience is just not like into it. So there's a balance.
As I said, the next step up from that would kind of be a little bit of what Bumpy's been doing more recently, of like showing a bit of who you are outside of gaming and streaming. So like, oh, here's a new thing I cooked. Here's my dog, and like you don't want to post them like it's an Instagram post of like, here's a meal. But like, so put a little context in there, but let people see a side of you that isn't automatic of just like when you're playing your favorite game, or like give yourself a little bit more dimension in terms of who you are online and letting people get to know you. Okay, you want to say something?
It's this super, it's true. It's this weird switch that you have to have suddenly in your head when you do this, when you do social media, that you're like, oh, this thing that happened in my life, it's kind of cool or interesting or funny or silly or whatever. Like, maybe I should share it. Maybe I should share it. Or it's just relatable, right? I have a dog. I have, like things like that. Like, that's just, you don't overdo it all the time, stuff like that. But you're like, my dog says hello, things like that. That's just, that to me is like wholesome crap posting, right? Like, it's like, there's no real reason for it, but it establishes you as a person and a relatable one at that.
Just sharing more about yourself, right?
Yeah, it goes a long way. You don't want to overshare or make that like your total everything and stuff like that. But I think what I was saying about Northernlion is the same thing that you're saying about Bumpy. It's about the diversification of what you're doing there. You're not just gonna you're not there for one particular purpose. Or rather, if you are, and that's what's showing all the time, it's probably not going to work out as well as if you're if it's supposed to be a personal account that is tied into your your Twitch or your YouTube channel, then there should be more than just you pushing out the links to your content creation posts and such. Mm-hmm. That can be part of it, but now you have to fill it in, like with other aspects of the account, I guess, of who you are, of what you're trying to bring to that account and stuff. Because some it can be like you can have a developer account, you can have a personal account, you could have or like a studio account. I know some people that even have even I actually have this right now because I don't want to post all my streaming stuff on my main, so I have a Cupogoodness side channel or account that is much smaller, but that way I can kind of be a little more ad nauseum about my streaming stuff that I don't want to bother everybody on the channel that I have, or the account I've established a long time ago. That said, if there's something special on Cupogoodness that I want to share, I might retweet it or share it on my bigger account. So, like, there's ways to go about that. I don't know. I'm not sure that like there's a right way or anything, but I've had my Twitter account, one of my Twitter accounts, since 2008 or 9, and I can tell you that the activity, if you looked at like how the activity was, it'd be very much all over the place. Very much dark periods at times, right, versus more active periods. And I'm like okay with not like having like just now over the last couple of years, I feel like I figured out more things about Twitter in its current state than I had ever known about it in the past. And so that to me just means it's not like persevere or anything like that, but just continue to come back to it. Take a look at it, see if it's right for you in the time and space that you're in. And if it's not, I think like you were saying, Kelly, just leave it be, and come back to it when it makes sense to, if it makes sense to at all.
Yeah, because the other flip side of like, instead of just sharing things about your life, it's also a great way to learn. Like if you have questions about streaming, I wouldn't just like throw them against big streamers' other posts of like, hey, by the way, it's this, but you can ask it on your account and maybe some people are going to retweet it. Or if a big streamer or someone in any industry really who might have the answer is having any kind of discussion, that's going to be your opportunity to go in there and ask your questions and to learn. So it doesn't have to be just about, oh, this will help people get to know you or help grow your platform. It can just be kind of a good, more low-key way to kind of just learn and absorb information and ask questions. And we said this in our more social media focused chat, but be part of the conversation. Don't just be saying things and hoping other people will respond. You want to be responding to other people's content and engaging with their questions and their projects. And you can learn so much that way.
Yeah, and on a platform where everybody knows everything, asking questions is going to get you, not asking non-rhetorical questions is probably going to get you interaction, right? Like, because everybody knows everything on Twitter. I mean, everybody knows everything. So you will get answers to your questions, most likely. And whether they're, good for you or not, you'll have to parse that and such. But my point is that, like, asking questions that aren't rhetorical, because a lot of people just want to ask rhetorical questions to get likes and stuff. But if you ask like a question for real to the Twitter community, you'll at certain, at least your section that you're trying to pose the question to, you're probably going to get responses. So it's a good thought, and it's a good point. So that kind of ties into. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, real quick. So one of the things that I've struggled with, and I still don't have an answer to this, so I'll continue to play around with it. But I like you said, you don't want to just be posting like, hey, here's video 1 of this, here's video 2 of this, here's video 3 of this. And some people still do that, I guess, but a lot of that gets buried in Twitter's, like, nobody cares about this, and they hide it from you so you don't see it. I don't want to do that. Like, I personally was like, I don't want to just be like, hey, I put out a new thing, check it out. Like, I didn't want to be the repost my own stuff bot. So I tend to try to keep it to, like, hey, this is my first time looking at X game. I'm starting a new series on this, and it's kind of like a first time thing. That's the same thing, my same approach with YouTube. I don't generally go, hey, subscribe, share, like, that you see on every video, and it makes you want to throw your monitor through a wall. I do that usually in like episode 1, and then I don't bug people anymore. But there's a reason people do all that stuff for so long. Because people need to be told time and time and time again. There's still channels that I watch that I'm not subscribed to, usually because I'm petty and they do something I don't like, and I'm like, nope. Until that changes, I'm never going to subscribe. But that's beside the point. But I have subscribed to other channels, and they still do the hey, subscribe, hey, hit the like button, all this stuff, and it's like, there's got to be a better way of doing that. I feel like I definitely do it too little, but I don't want to do it too much. I know this is not really necessarily on topic, but
no, it is.
It's just one of those things. I don't know.
You gotta find a classy way to do it. I feel like that's like the difference, and the way to do it classily is not shove it in your face every video. That's for sure. Possibly having text, graphics and texts
that's how the publishing channel I'm part of. That's how we've done it. Of StreamYard that we use can give you a bunch of banners and stuff. So we have a like and subscribe one, and we'll always like throw it in kind of funny moments of like, if you like whatever nonsense we just did or whatever, or just end of the chat. It's 10 seconds. Like it is, and I find it way more annoying in videos than in live chats of like, if you're wrapping up, thanks for watching, if you want more of this kind of thing. But we usually just kind of do it in moments where you can laugh about it of like, yeah, we know this is kind of annoying, but if you want more of this, like and subscribe, and we've never had any issues with it.
Yeah, of course. I feel like you understanding that you're like, I know y'all have heard this a million times on different channels, and you're real with that. That's like, it just shows to the people that you're doing it that you're like, it's just part of. You could see it. You could see the people who do it at the highest levels, and some of them will be like, this is just part of the job. It's not necessarily something that I love doing, and you can tell that, but it is part of the job. And so we do it, and thank you for bearing with me a lot of times, right?
And we've drawn the line at we don't ask anyone to ring that bell, because who wants to be notified as soon as we do something? So none of us like that, so we don't ask other people to do it.
Yeah, right. And that's another thing. I'll get people that are like, I wanted to watch this or this series, but you put out so many different things, and it's like cluttering my inbox or whatever. I'm like, you have an inbox for you to like? I don't. I look and I'm like, oh, there's something new on this channel that I'm subscribed to, and I click it. If it's something I'm interested in, I watch it. If I don't, like, I don't know. People, I guess, have to have, like, do you guys ever go to your homepage of YouTube? I was like, wait, there's a homepage to YouTube? What's all this stuff?
I only use my subscriptions page.
Yeah,
that's kind of
I'm always on my channel page, but yeah, it's the same situation, right? On the side of mine, like on my channel, it just shows a little red dot if there's something new from a channel that I'm subscribed to. I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I never look up recommended videos. I don't have here's a curated feed of stuff you'll like. I don't do that, so I don't know if that's just me or if that's everybody. But I will look into that, by the way. Tigers fan, a Nightinator, does a good job of balancing social media with, hey, I'm live versus, hey, here's my life content. So, like I said, it's always something that there's a certain parts of the content creation, streaming, all that's... There's no great way to do it, and I see everybody doing it, and I hate most of it. And I know it's not like it's their fault. It's just a thing that you have to do, right? So, I don't know. I'm always looking for better ways to do that. Oh, one other word of advice, content creation versus streaming. So, creating a video versus streaming. Streaming is the easiest thing you can conceivably do. If you want to take it easy to start with, go live, stream. If you're not comfortable on camera, pretend like you're live. Get comfortable on camera. Record it, and then look at it afterward. But streaming is 1,000 times easier than doing curated X number of minute videos. It's so much easier. You just sit there, you play a game, you read chat, you have fun, you're done, you turn it off, and you're done. That's it. When you're creating videos and everything else, you got to go in, you got to edit, you got to render, you got to throw your intro, your outro on if you have all that stuff set up, and it's just so much more work. So if you want an easier time to get started, streaming's probably easier, but getting the audience is going to be maybe harder there. I don't know anymore. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, I'll double down on that though. In that, like, if you when you're getting started, watch your content that you put out there, streams or YouTube videos, for two reasons. One, to feel good, because it feels good to go back and watch your accomplishments and see, hey, look, I was streamed for 2 hours and like I could see myself and I'm doing it. There's like affirmation there. Two, you can also see things that you're like, oh, this is kind of boring, or there's a flaw here, or I'm doing something that's annoying. I want to fix this.
Like, oh, I didn't
and
know
if you
that
watch
happened.
yourself,
Yeah.
yeah, like well, I mean, that first half a year, or even now, I still go back occasionally if I have the time and feel like it, and watch my streams just to say, okay, like what's the rhythm here? What's the vibe? Are there lulls? And then just kind of consider that going forward. Maybe I'm actively, aggressively trying to fix things. Maybe I'm just saying, okay, I'll think about that, kind of moving forward. But it gives you something to work with. So I think that's just to continue to press on that, like be willing to self critique and also enjoy the content that you create and appreciate it, and know that I know that a lot of times it's based on how many people outside of yourself sees it, but understand that you're still improving, making efforts, and putting new content out there is an accomplishment in itself, and should be celebrated to some degree, as opposed to just always like, oh, this isn't doing number. It's just tying your happiness to numbers
Sucks.
It's a very rough road. So, and that's what I'll wrap up with. My last note is what to do when you're stuck in a rut. Maybe in general, in terms of viewership, I think it's really hard to answer. But from my perspective, it might be that you haven't found your best voice or your best angle yet, and you need to keep like kind of exploring and seeing where you might find sort of an angle that you haven't thought about yet, or bringing something new to the table, or formatting your stream in a different way. Continue to push down new paths you're passionate about. Present your channel with various personal interests you have, etc. And at the very least, you're gaining experience. Presumably, you're improving on your craft here and sticking to content that fulfills you. If you stay in the game long enough, opportunities you might not expect could present themselves. So just because you're going for full-time content creation on it's a numbers game in a lot of respects. Your experience might lead you to job opportunities that you would not have had otherwise, just through your efforts, regardless of numbers and viewership. So it's always something to, again, it's all about kind of perspective, goals, what's between the ears, what you're thinking. Your results and success is what is success. Bumpy said there's a lot of people that aren't successful. Well, what is success to you as you're entering content creation and streaming? And make sure that those goals are realistic. You don't want to just come in and say I'm going to compete with the biggest streamers out there, unless you want some serious like letdowns and tough nights. You might be an exception to the rule, but that's just where we're at right now, where you have to consider yourself in that really crowded pool, and I gotta really brick by brick or step by step get there, and not just do it, not just through consistency, but through creativity as well, and personality. Even if you feel like your personality is lacking compared to some of the other ones out there, you probably fit an audience somewhere. You just need to find your voice for your personality in that content creation streaming situation, and then kind of go from there. I think that's kind of my, wrap up on it and personal kind of thoughts on it as we hit the almost 90-minute mark. We're about 82 minutes in.
Real quick, couple things for me is if I ever start to really just get super down, and it happens, I will oftentimes, because I'm really all over the place, I'm like an ADD or ADHD person's nightmare/dream, because I have like 70 open series. It's crazy. Anyway, I will go and I will sit down and I will spend a day recording and playing something that I personally really, really love. Now, granted, I do actually enjoy like 90% what I play, so that's hard, but I'll have my favorites that I really want to get into. And I'll just do that. And then I'll have this bulk of extra stuff that I can upload at whatever point. And that helps. There are other times where I know that, despite what the numbers may say, that I know I'm doing what I love to do and what I want to do and what I should be doing, is when I've gone on vacation and I don't do my recordings and I still have access to a computer, I can play whatever I want. I'm free to do what I want. It doesn't feel right not recording an episode. There's oftentimes I could play games and be like, oh, I could do this and just play it on my own. Who cares? It just doesn't feel right unless I'm here with my microphone and I'm recording an episode and I'm doing, it just doesn't feel like I'm spending my time wisely. I don't get the same enjoyment out of the game as, when I share my experiences. So as much as times I get down, when I take that break, I realize how much I love what I do, and I come back and I keep doing it. And it's happened several times, and sometimes not even when I'm down. It's just one of those, man, I really missed this, and I came back and it's just like I'm on fire, So
yeah, that break, right? Like that goes back to burnout and what content creation and streaming can lead you into sometimes because of the demand, right, of output.
Well, you don't take a second to look around. It's getting that different perspective and realizing that, hey, I really do love this, despite it being something that I grind at and I do day in, day out. So, yeah.
And it's I think it's fairly common sense, but it's always good to repeat commonsensical things sometimes. If you do something all the time, it's gonna get less fun. Like if you don't mix it up a little bit and do something else occasionally to break up what your constant is, that constant is probably going to reduce in enjoyment over time. If it's your job, and you enjoy it somewhat, obviously taking vacations from that is really important to keep that enjoyment level, at least at the bare minimum kind of thing. If you're not a content creator, if you're just doing a job that you're like, whatever, I don't necessarily love this job, etc. It's just something to keep in mind, right? Like I think it's not something you think about when you're super young, but as like a 36-year-old, I can tell you multiple times over the last 10 years, the best thing I've ever done for myself is to completely disconnect or walk away from the daily stuff, like the stuff that I'm doing all the time. When nothing else is going on, break up the status quo stuff every once in a while to remember why you're doing it. Remember why, to get that to say this is, I'm pulled to do this and stuff. If you never have,
it's gonna be my final wrap-up question, and maybe Bumpy had already answered this to an extent, but for both of you, just on a personal level, what drew you to streaming? Did you have any goals you were kind of working towards? What made you think, oh, this is something I want to do?
Me or you, Bumpy?
You go first. I'll spit it out in a minute.
So for me, it was the middle of the pandemic, and so there a lot of the social aspects of what I was used to had been reduced to rubble. Virtual stuff was there, and we were doing Zoom and that kind of stuff. But I had graduated college with a theater degree and was down in LA writing and acting for several years before I got into the games industry and really started pursuing, or actually at the same time. And so from that, and then especially not being able to do a whole lot of public or, even getting together and doing like an improv group type of thing or acting classes and things like that over the last year, I saw streaming as an opportunity to get in front of the camera again, get my voice kind of back again. Like it was that I hadn't done a lot of this stuff in like a decade. Kids got in the way, family got in the way, other stuff, job, focused on the PR marketing stuff. So I just hadn't been able to really, it's a creative outlet for me, right? And I just I hadn't really thought about that before, that it could be that for me. And then in the middle of last year, it was like, what else am I doing? I got my work done. I'm not going out and mixing it up with anybody or, going to even do my exercises or anything like that. So it was nice. It was almost, I'm 36. I'm not sure it was a midlife crisis type of thing, but it was a cool kind of like new thing to try, in my mid 30s that I'd never tried before. And I got a lot of support from that made me feel, that still to this day carries me, in terms of wanting to now pursue other things that I've thought about doing, but never actually like fully went for. Because it's like, this is not, as Bumpy points out, hitting the live button and just going for it is not super hard. It can be like an anxiety thing, but it's not something that it's like, this is going to be an undertaking that I can't handle. It's just like sort of a mental game of like, do I feel like being up today and do I have the energy to stream and such? And I've discovered that as well over the last year. I have such a huge respect for streamers and content creators now in terms of how many times you have to go live a week and how many times you have to be on. It's being on isn't being fake, right? Like I don't think being on and being like, engaging, even though that might not be your standard when the lights, when the cameras go off and that kind of stuff, that might not be your standard, cadence or personality. I still think it's fine to ramp up a little bit and stuff. Like if you see on the squad stream sometimes with Bumpy and I get real manic and crazy, and it's just because I'm having fun. It's part of it, and it pulls me in and stuff. So I have a lot of respect now that I didn't have before, or not that I didn't have respect before for them, but in a way that I just was going, man, this is so hard. Even sitting there on a normal day, and you're going to stream in about 10 minutes, you're like, I don't know, I'm gonna not go live today. And you're like, why? Why do I feel that? And it's just a weird feeling. So it's something that I think that a lot of people will probably encounter if they do go that direction. And it's not something to say that it's a turn up or anything, but just be ready for that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's why I really got into it, was to push myself into a new direction. And then I knew it would tie back into everything else I did with my game industry stuff. So there was no reason not to take a chance on it and go for it. And it's like, I wouldn't say it's like, oh, I'm super passionate about it, but there are things that I could bring to the table that there are passionate things I could bring to the table through the stream. So that's really cool.
Real quick, Triple G plus 2, we're going to keep changing his name every time, says, the one of a kind, next best thing, 1 follower and growing. I like it. And then Missy pointed out from YouTube, she thanked us for pointing out the Burnout part earlier on. Now, for me, as far as why I got into it, and, I've been thinking about this more lately, and I don't know, it probably sounds bad, but we'll just say that over the course of my life, basically I've been playing games since I was a very small child, Commodore 64 my father had, all that stuff. I've been very good at video games, like really, really decent, and at times even pro level, though there were no pros when I was younger. So I was really good, and when I moved to Canada, there was a 5-year immigration process where I wasn't able to work. And I got bored. And I started first scoffing at video game with commentary, Let's Plays. This is the most ridiculous thing ever. Started watching some. Because again, I got bored. And then I started realizing that I'm better than almost everyone that I watched playing. And I love video games, and it's something I was passionate about. I couldn't work, so I was like, well, let's throw myself into this. And here we are, almost 8 years later. It'll be 8 years in the beginning of November. So, and in 2 days, it'll be 10 years married to my wife.
Congrats.
Oh, congrats.
So yeah, it's something that I think everybody has to have a reason for it, but it's never going to be there are going to be lots of different reasons for maybe that push into what it is. And I think Bumpy and I both commented on the top. It was timing for both of us, right? Yeah. Like it was the timing of it. Like it was regardless of it, it always seems like it's, if you're going to add that, it's like adding a new element to your life or a new, portion or whatever. Like if you think about your life as a pizza, right? Like it feels like, if you have 8 different things going on, those are your 8 slices. Can you add a 9th? That kind of thing. It can feel that way with me personally as like someone who has a family, a full-time job, runs a company, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot to that, right? Like it's like, do I want to add additional stuff to my plate? But that's why I framed it in a way that if I'm not consistent, that kind of stuff, it's not a bother to me. So again, just running this back one more time. Set your goals and understand, be realistic about what exactly you're trying to accomplish based on the life that you're living now. It might not, you might not be in a position to go full-time content creator. You have to be real about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had the time to do full-time content creation. I kind of started slow, and then I just had fun doing it. And before I knew it, I was doing it like over, at some point, I think it was over 120 hours a week I spent doing YouTube stuff. That's a lot of time. I literally woke up, ate, and slept, and that was it, doing the stuff. So I've trailed it back a bit, but yeah, you never know what the next day is going to bring.
Yeah, I think Bumpy and I would both say as well that it's super, there can be downtimes, but like there's super great moments from doing this, like getting a great response, hearing that you helped make a sale on a game because one of your audience members told you that they bought it.
That's big for me.
Or just having a great interaction, right? Like with chat, someone saying, "I love your channel," that kind of stuff. It just makes you feel. It's like the same with the social media. Like sometimes you need that dopamine every once in a while, and content creation can serve that for you. Like it can serve that, like, I'm putting something out there. Someone pointed out sometime, they're like, "Man, Twitter's just full of a bunch of needy people," and they're like, "Yeah, what did you think that this was?" Like, you know what I mean? It's like, of course we're like asking for attention, like we're attention-seeking people. Like, why else would we be here? And I think that was great for me because it kind of tore down the whole gate of, or the whole like wall of, you should be cool with it and that kind of stuff. And no, it's like we're here to show off. We're here to put ourselves out here unapologetically to some degree. So I like that way they put that. Because everyone's like, I don't understand why people put their selfies out there and stuff like that. It's like they want attention, they want likes. It's self-affirming for them. You know what I mean? Like, and if we're not a bunch of selfie people, then you could probably find affirmation in other ways through via social media and stuff. That's just the easy button. If you're good looking, you can just be like, yeah, there we go, 3 likes. And stuff.
Missy says the small comments help a lot indeed. They give you the energy to keep going, and it's true. There's times where I'm feeling just, all right, we'll get through today, and we'll see how we feel tomorrow. And then somebody just says something, or something happens, an email comes through, and you weren't expecting, or whatever. And it really can pick you up out of a bad mood, or you're starting to spiral, and then all of a sudden it just it rights the ship. So yeah.
And no matter how small your community is, if you have a few of those community members, just don't take those for granted.
No.
You're always trying to build. We're always trying to get bigger with our communities and such. But the people that have been there from the start or have been there for a long time and continue to come on and say just really enjoying the content and stuff, make sure that you're keeping them in mind and doing it for them as much as trying to get new numbers and growth and all that, because they are the ones that are like the true MVPs of the situation to carry you over.
The people who are showing up consistently is what on the publishing channel for us. Like, we have a few people who show up every Sunday, are always willing to talk, and like one of them recommended, can you do this for the next book club? So we rearranged what we were going to do. I'm like, yes, you show up every week. We would love to talk about what you want to talk about.
That's right. They become a part of the stream, or they become a part of the show when they're consistent, and they add elements to it, right? They add personality to it, angles to it that you yourself couldn't have done on your own, right? So it is, even if it's just a small community, can make such a big difference towards just obviously benefits to your channel, but also your general feeling towards it, and your want and your motivation to keep going. It's always a big thing, and as we struggle and we pull and try to climb, and that kind of aspects, whether it's content creation, developer, streamer, etc. Those that are already here supporting us, like it never take it for granted. It's really something that tells you that you're heading in the right direction in the first place, I think.
All right, and now for the comedy section of the thing, you guys will have to watch. You'll see it in about 15 seconds here. We have a pretty coaster here, and then we have a green one that's green screened. It's kind of hilarious. I don't know.
I see the blue one.
Yeah, the green screen.
And there's the
That's
it's
great.
there. It's not frightening. I thought it was scary at first. In front of your face, maybe. No, we're okay. We're okay.
It's pretty funny.
The
Anyway,
green screen background is not so horrifying.
I
So.
know it's pretty funny though. It's like my psych mug it's a lighter green than what's shown on the desk there, but it also gets completely enveloped by the green screen, except for the psychic is in and psych. So yeah, I had some fun playing around, and I decided, I'm in Canada, got to make the little ice cave here, I figured that was on brand, and then I went a little crazy with all the other random stuff that I threw on the desk. So
I liked it because when you originally showed me, it was basically just the top of the desk.
Yeah.
And then you added the posters and all that kind of on there as well. So, again, just super jealous over here.
Just gotta have some fun sometimes. Sometimes you just gotta throw something out there and have some fun. Anyway, that's it. Next week, are you guys gonna go ahead on your own, or are we canceling and pushing it?
We're off next week, but we'll be back on the 22nd. And I think we do. I just need to look it up. If you can look it up faster, go for it.
I can tab quick enough.
Race it. Let's see.
Why don't I see it? There it is.
September.
Steam page is number 2.
Okay, so we're going to dive back into Steam store optimization. We really covered that, I think, pretty well the first time, but there were still just some things we just couldn't get to in 90 minutes or whatever we had.
Yeah.
So we'll be, I'll be racking my brain on that, diving into Steamworks, and if I come back out of that rabbit hole, I should have a whole bunch of new things we can talk about
If I come back
in a couple
out
weeks
of
from
it.
now. Yeah, if I do, if
I survive.
But, you know, if
All right, folks. Well, thank you all for joining us. Any final thoughts? A tiny disaster. Don't want to just run away without you getting a final word in.
No, we covered so much. So you wrap. We're good.
All right. Well, that is it. We will be back again, not this next week, but the following week. I will be busy, most likely, doing other things, so I will not be here, and that means that we will have a whole week of Cup down in Steamworks trying to figure out how to get it all to work. He's going to come back. He's going to be like 20 pounds lighter, which is going to be scary. He's going to be
just soot all over my face.
Soot. He's going to be all wrinkly,
like,
though, because he'll be like all pruny from the constant moisture.
I got the black lung pop.
Yeah.
You know. So.
And yeah, we're gonna have some good times. Anyway, thanks for stopping in. We are the Indie Brothers. Hopefully, you guys had some fun. You gleaned some information, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks' time. Take care.